Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. What's up, everyone? I've been lurking on this subreddit for ages, but never posted before. Well, I've got a juicy story to share, so buckle up because it's going to be a long one. Just a heads up. Background. I've been in the retail game for over 25 years, and let me tell you, some of the managers they hire are totally clueless. I could do a way better job, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Over the years, I've built up a solid reputation. They call me the reliable one. Need someone to come in on their day off? They call me. Need someone to stay late? They call me. Need to swap shifts because the boss said no to your day off request? They call me. Need to switch because of last-minute plans? Yep, they call me. You can probably guess where this story is going, right? This whole thing went down a few years back in 2021 when I was working as a cashier at a major grocery store in my city. The story. The place had a ridiculous turnover rate, with people and managers coming and going like a revolving door. It was madness. Anyway, I was just a regular cashier, but here's the thing. I tend to be a little too good at my job, if you know what I mean. My job description was cashier, plain and simple, but I was trained to handle all sorts of extra duties that weren't really part of my role. Need change? I'd grab it from the till and get it for you. Need an override? I'd come over, figure out the issue, and do the override. Need something from behind the counter? Just tell me what it is, and I'd grab it for you. I did all this on top of my regular cashier and self-checkout duties. Then this total jerk showed up. Let's call him Derek. Derek was the front-end manager, which meant he was in charge of everything happening at the registers, the cash office, customer service, and self-checkouts. I actually liked the previous manager, Ashley. She was great, and I enjoyed working with her. Ashley got pregnant with her second kid, and she was excited about it. When she came back from maternity leave, though, she decided to go part-time instead of returning as a manager. Can't really blame her, to be honest. Being a manager meant working crazy hours like 5 a.m. to whenever the last customer left, which could be as late as 11:15 p.m. sometimes, with no overtime allowed. Part-time was a better deal. Enter Derek, the new front-end manager. If you ever wondered what that spoiled brat from school grew up to be, well, Derek was it. This guy was the kind of manager who expected you to follow his orders without question. Have plans after work? Derek expected you to cancel them right then and there and come in. Have a doctor's appointment? Cancel it and come to work instead. If you said no, he'd give you this really condescending look and say, "Well, I need you to do it anyway." Then he'd just glare at you, trying to intimidate you into caving. The setup. Look, I've had my fair share of terrible managers over the years, the kind that would make you want to walk out and never come back if you didn't need the money. But I've also had some great ones. Derek was somewhere in the middle, leaning more towards the I want to quit side of things. I'll admit, I've developed a pretty sassy and sarcastic personality from dealing with all the crap in this job. I'm blunt, I say what's on my mind, and I don't put up with nonsense. Apparently Derek never got the memo about me not taking any BS. Around this time, summer was ending, and the store was in hiring mode with lots of open positions. Keep that in mind. So what did Derek do to kick off my revenge plot against him? Strike one. I'd had outpatient vein surgery on one of my legs and needed to take a few days off. Since I had some vacation time saved up, I used those hours so I wouldn't miss out on pay. Derek called me the day before I was supposed to come in and asked if I could work a 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. shift. I asked him 3 times on the phone, "Who's closing?" Because originally I was scheduled to close that day until I got my days off approved. Derek never answered me, so I figured they had someone lined up to close. I came in for my shift, and of course, halfway through, Derek calls me over and says they don't have a closer. Keep in mind, I asked him 3 times on the phone who was closing. Derek wanted me to clock out, go home for a few hours, and then come back in to close the store. I said no, explaining that one. I was really tired from the surgery just a few days earlier, and 2, I already had plans with my husband that evening. Of course, Derek didn't like that. The next time I came to work, he was super petty and passive-aggressive towards me. He'd either pretend I wasn't there, ignore me, or drag out a transaction way longer than necessary, then chastise me in front of customers for taking too long. When I had a follow-up appointment with my vein doctor, Derek asked if I could come in earlier that day. I told him no because of my doctor's appointment in the morning. Then he pulled his usual, "Well, I need you to do it anyway," stare-down routine. Unfortunately for him, I'm used to dealing with rude customers trying to intimidate me when something doesn't go their way. I shut that down real quick by getting the other cashier's attention when they needed help or grabbing a customer to assist. When I came in after my appointment, Derek had this smug grin on his face and said loudly, within earshot of some bigwigs from corporate who were visiting that day, "Well, OP, looks like you noticed I didn't call you in earlier since we didn't need you." I just replied, Good, because I wouldn't have been able to come in early anyway. Strike 2. Remember how I mentioned the store had a bunch of open positions? Well, the customer service desk needed some help, and the only way to get that gig was to ask your manager. So, I went to Derek and inquired about being assigned to the customer service desk. With everything I was already doing, I was essentially the unofficial front-end assistant manager without the pay or title. Derek said he'd get back to me, especially since I was doing such a great job. 2 to 3 weeks later, I'm seeing people I'd trained, or who had started after me getting promoted to the customer service desk, while I was still stuck as a regular cashier with all those extra responsibilities piled on top. The customer service desk position would have been an easy 50-cent raise. The monitor position, a step below management, would have been a 75-cent raise. But of course, Derek didn't want to pay me more for doing the same work I was already doing. I was getting the message loud and clear. Why buy the cow when you're getting the milk for free? Strike 3. At this point, I was looking for another job because I was sick and tired of being treated like dirt, but I wanted to give Derek one last chance. I found out there was an opening in the seafood department, and I even talked to the seafood manager, Debbie, about possibly transferring over. She was thrilled at the prospect of having me on her team and was willing to work around my college schedule. The only thing left was to talk to my manager, Derek, and get the transfer process rolling. I approached Derek, and he immediately started making up every excuse in the book to prevent me from transferring departments. I shut down each one, even the ridiculous claim that another coworker was already transferring, which was news to me. But that coworker said they had no issue with me transferring too. So I thought, okay, that's settled, right? Wrong. 3 to 4 weeks go by, and I'm getting nowhere with this transfer. Even Debbie was wondering why management was dragging their feet on getting me moved over to seafood. Turns out Derek had blocked my transfer, and they ended up hiring a new employee for the seafood department instead. Derek thought that by denying my transfer request, he could force me to stay put since there were no open positions. After an argument about this whole mess, where I called Derek out on his BS, he uttered the magic words, "Just do your job." Cue the malicious compliance. Just do my job. Okay. I was so glad we had to wear masks because otherwise Derek might have seen my evil grin when I agreed to just do my job. Need an override? Sorry, but I'm not management or a monitor, so I can't do that. Let me grab someone who can. Need change? Sorry, but I'm not management or a monitor, so I can't do that. Let me grab someone who can. Need change? Sorry, not management or a monitor, can't help with that either. Let me get someone authorized to open the till. Need something from behind the customer service desk? Sorry, I'm not trained or certified for that. Let me find someone who can get that for you. Derek was at his wit's end and even tried to write me up, but I shut that down fast by reciting the exact job description for a cashier. I told him that if he wanted me to keep doing all those extra duties, he'd have to promote me officially. He quickly backed off into his usual passive-aggressive behavior, which I just as swiftly deflected. Eventually, I landed another job with better pay and benefits, so I handed in my resignation giving 10 days notice. Derek tried to deny it, saying, "No, you have to give 2 weeks." I hit back with, "You wouldn't give us 2 weeks if you were firing or laying us off? It would just be a 2-minute warning." Cue the petty revenge. You're probably wondering what petty revenge I could possibly take, right? Well, there's an old saying, never kill the golden goose. So what do you think happens to a department that's completely reliant on one person known as the reliable one? Need me to come in on my day off? Sorry, got plans. Need me to stay late? Can't, already have plans. Someone called out? Sorry, can't make it in. I pulled that routine for the rest of my time there. Derek couldn't do a thing about it, and it was killing him to see what happens when you mistreat the one person you depend on so heavily to cover for you. His performance was slipping hard without me there to cover his butt, and he had to actually handle his own responsibilities for once. There was nothing he could do to retaliate either. He just tried giving me extra attitude, but I'd smile, wave goodbye to everyone but him, and be on my way. But this wouldn't be a true pro-revenge story without the pro-revenge part, right? After venting to a friend about what went down, they suggested reporting Derek's behavior to the district manager because that's not acceptable in the workplace. Cue the pro-revenge. I got the district manager's email from my friend and went back to the store as a customer. I kept in touch with a few former co-workers, asking how things were going and if they minded venting to me about Derek's management. Most were happy to rant, so I grabbed my phone, opened a notes app, and jotted down dates, register numbers, and what they told me, all with their permission to include it anonymously. I compiled all that along with my own detailed account into an email and sent it off to the district manager. But I didn't stop there. This is pro-revenge after all. You see, every receipt has a customer survey on the bottom, and management was always pushing us to get customers to fill them out because it impacted the store's metrics. Here's the key. When you complete that survey and add comments, it gets seen by everyone. Derek, the assistant manager, the store manager, the regional manager, the district manager, all the way up to corporate reps. So you can bet I was filling out those surveys every single time I went in, whether I needed a snack for school, groceries, or just a drink. I made sure to detail every crappy thing Derek did and how he mistreated his employees on every single one of those comment sections. 3 months after I left, the new hire they'd brought in for seafood to block me from transferring, she quit. 6 months after I left, Derek was nowhere to be found. A new front-end manager had taken over and no one seemed to know what happened to that jerk. The next one is an entitled people story. When I inherited my grandpa's old farmhouse, I was thrilled to have a place of my own. The 2-story cottage sat nestled on 5 acres of land, surrounded by lush forests and rolling hills. It was a serene little oasis that Grandpa had built with his own 2 hands decades ago. After the funeral, I wasted no time packing up and moving out of my tiny city apartment. The day I got the keys, I felt Grandpa's presence embracing me as I stepped into the cozy living room he'd carved out of knotty pine. Over the next few weeks, I settled into my new home, fixing little things here and there. The worn leather couch got reupholstered, the creaky floorboards reinforced, and the dusty curtains swapped out for breezy linen. One morning, as I sat sipping coffee on the front porch, an SUV pulled up, and out stepped a severe-looking woman clutching a clipboard. Her pinched face and tightly permed hair marked her as the quintessential Karen. "Good morning," I called out. "Can I help you?" The woman marched over, peering disdainfully at my flannel shirt and work boots caked with dirt from tilling the vegetable garden. "I'm Carol from the Homeowner Association Board. Are you the new owner?" she demanded. I nodded cautiously, unsure why this uptight woman was questioning me on my own property. "Well, it seems you are in violation of several homeowner association rules," Carol declared, pointing a manicured finger at her clipboard. "Overgrown grass exceeding height limit, exterior paint colors not pre-approved, illegal structure on south side." She prattled on, but my mind was stuck on one glaring fact. I wasn't part of any homeowner association. When Grandpa built this place, he made sure it stood independent from the newer suburban development down the road that boasted its own homeowners association. "Excuse me, but I'm not a homeowner association member, so your rules don't apply to me," I interjected firmly. Carol's heavily penciled eyebrows shot up in surprise. Clearly, she wasn't used to being challenged. "Well, that simply isn't true," she huffed. "This property falls under the Oak Hills Homeowner Association jurisdiction, which means you need to comply with the rules to maintain harmony and property values." I tried to explain again that the land predated the homeowner association's existence, but Carol refused to listen. She thrust a copy of the rules into my hand along with a bill for $300 in fines I'd apparently racked up. Then she flounced back to her SUV and sped off. Well, that first run-in with the homeowner association should have been a red flag. Things only got worse from there. Carol began showing up every few days, inventing new infractions and slapping me with outrageous fines. My car parked too close to the road, $150 fine. The scent from my rose garden wafting into a neighbor's yard, $250 fine. Music from my wind chimes disturbing homeowner association members, $500 fine. It was completely insane. The fines kept piling up into the thousands, even though I hadn't actually joined this blasted homeowner association. I tried to reason with Carol and the other board members, showing them my property deed and even Grandpa's original architectural plans, but they refused to back down, convinced my land fell under their authority. It all came to a head one hot August afternoon when I was repainting the window shutters a light sage green. Carol came tearing up the drive, yelling that I hadn't received approval for the color change. She waved a new fine for $1,000 in my face, threatening to put a lien on my house if I didn't pay up. I finally lost it. This deranged woman thought she could waltz onto my property that I owned free and clear and dictate what colors I could paint my own dang shutters. This ended today. I got right up in Carol's pinched face and told her in no uncertain terms that she was illegally harassing me. I said I had half a mind to dig up Grandpa from his grave just so he could tell her himself that she was nuts. A bit dramatic, I know, but hey, she drove me to it, Carol gasped, clearly not expecting me to talk back. She kept on about homeowner association bylaws until I shut her down again, whipping out my phone to call the police. At that point, she finally realized I meant business. Sputtering vague threats, Carol scuttled back to her SUV and peeled away, knocking over my mailbox as a final act of spite. Enough was enough. These homeowner association crazies couldn't keep trying to claim what wasn't theirs. It was time to fight back. Legally. I hired a slick real estate attorney who helped me take the homeowner association to court for harassment and trying to unlawfully enforce rules on my sovereign property. At the hearing, I submitted ironclad deed records proving my ownership dated before the homeowner association's inception. My lawyer grilled Carol on the witness stand, getting her to admit she never actually verified whether my land fell under their jurisdiction. The final nail in the homeowner association's coffin came when the developer who built the surrounding subdivision testified that my 5 acres were explicitly excluded from homeowner association authority. Grandpa, that clever old fox, had barred his land from their grubby paws. The judge ruled fully in my favor, declaring my property exempt from any homeowner association oversight. I was awarded $50,000 in damages for the harassment I endured. The homeowner association was barred from setting foot on my land again. Carol left the courthouse in tears, escorted by a police officer for trying to attack my lawyer in a fit of rage. I walked out with my head held high, justice finally served. In the months since my legal victory, I've come to appreciate my house and land more than ever. Grandpa left me this oasis for a reason. He knew I'd protect what was rightfully ours. That's exactly what I did by stopping Carol and her petty tyrants in their tracks. Out here, surrounded by nature's serenity, the only rules that matter are my own. Grandpa would be proud I faced down that homeowner association dragon and sent it packing. This paradise he built is my sanctuary now, and not even a deranged Karen can take that away. The next one is a petty revenge story. When I was in university, I went on a date with a guy I briefly met at the gym. Between meeting him at the gym and going on our first date, we didn't talk much as I'm not a texter, so I didn't know much about him prior. We went to my favorite Turkish restaurant, and outside of the gym, he wasn't what I expected. He dressed very flamboyantly in a colorful Gucci head-to-toe tracksuit, which isn't my preference, but I wasn't going to write a guy off just because of his outfit. He stunk of weed and had clearly been smoking prior, which is another thing that I'm not fond of. For religious reasons, I don't smoke or drink, so it's a huge turnoff. He was very obnoxious through the whole date, and a lot more aggressive than he was at the gym. He asked me questions like, what's your body count? He wasn't well-mannered, he had poor articulation, and we didn't have the same interests or pretty much any similarities. Nevertheless, I'm an optimistic person, and while no way would I ever consider him romantically, I could still enjoy his company for the length of a diner until he started making comments about our waitress. He made a comment about her massive rack, and I was immediately repulsed. Especially when I saw her, she looked no older than 16, being generous. I was instantly grossed out and told him I was going to the toilet when really I went to discreetly pay my half of the bill and leave. When I paid, the other waitress could tell it was a date gone wrong, and while I was paying, she asked if everything was okay because I looked visually uncomfortable. They had been eyeing our table because he was very clearly invading my personal space by sitting on my side of the booth, and they could see me coil away from him from time to time. I kept having to move his hand off my leg over and over, so it must have given them a bad vibe. I said I was fine, but he made an inappropriate comment about the younger waitress. She instantly started pressing me about what he said, and I was reluctant, so I kept it vague and just told her it was a rude comment about the girl's chest. Anyway, I went to the toilet to wait in there for my Uber so I could make my grand escape before I heard a bunch of yelling. 6 Turkish chefs were pushing him out of the restaurant, yelling at him. Apparently, one of the chefs was the young waitress's uncle, and she was only 14. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Many years ago, I worked in a locally run store that sold a bit of everything. I was the low-paid teenager that carried heavy things to people's vehicles. While working one day, I get called over the radio that a customer needed 12 bags of concrete, 80 lbs each. I was expecting to see a pickup truck or something similar backed up to our loading area. Instead, I saw a small Honda Civic there waiting for me. Thinking it was a mistake, I asked the driver to relocate momentarily as I had someone coming to pick up multiple bags of concrete. Imagine my surprise when they told me they were the customer I was waiting for. I asked the customer how much they wanted to take in each trip, as I believed the nearly 1,000 pounds of concrete might be too much for such a small vehicle to handle safely. The customer became aggravated and insisted that they were taking it all at once. I quickly ran this past the store owner to make sure I wouldn't be held liable for any damages. I ran back, apologized to the customer, and began loading the bags. As I loaded everything up, the customer made several quips about how the customer is always right, and that I was too young and naive to understand that vehicles are engineered with a margin of safety. It quickly became apparent that there was no play left in the suspension, but at this point I just stopped questioning things. I couldn't fit all of the bags in the trunk, so the customer cleared their back seat, and I loaded that up as well. Upon leaving the loading area, you could clearly hear things rubbing. As the car went to exit the parking lot, it passed over the elevation change between the lot and the road. There was a loud pop of something breaking, followed by scraping. I could see that the driver was irate in the car. After a moment, they got out, looked around and under their car. The guy sheepishly asked for my cell phone because his had died and he needed to make a few phone calls. A short time later, a tow truck came to remove the car, and the guy waited in our lot for nearly an hour until his wife could come pick him up. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.